Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Amig, your friendly rheumatologist from Onabridge MD. So I had the pleasure and the honor of being a guest on Chef AJ YouTube Live very recently, and it was a really awesome interview. It lasted more than an hour, and so there was so many good pieces of information. I talked a little bit about my own health journey, and then we talked about optimal nutrition in patients with inflammatory arthritis. And then ultimately, we also did a lot of Q&As, and I answered some questions from the audience. And I thought it was such an interesting interview that we would use this and put it for our Onabridge MD podcast. So we're going to do 3 episodes with it. You can also watch the whole thing on YouTube. If you just look at Dr. Amig, Amigues, Chef AJ, you will see that interview. And otherwise, you can just listen here and watch here. And you should absolutely check Chef AJ online. So she has this YouTube video that has over 200,000 followers. She is vegan, oil-free, salt-free, sugar-free. And she brings on her show many interesting people, and it was really cool to be interviewed there. So I hope you enjoy it. And again, this is going to be a 3-part series, and enjoy. Take care. Bye-bye.
Everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. As most often happens on Chef AJ Live, one guest is referred by another guest. And last week's guest, Dr. Rachel Rubin, introduced me to this week's guest. You are going to love her accent because I was raised by a French aunt, and I just love the way French people sound. Her name is Dr. Isabelle Amig. She is going to talk about optimal nutrition in inflammatory conditions, and she's going to talk about her journey, a very inspiring journey of having stage 4 cancer. Please welcome her to the show. Enchantée de faire votre connaissance.
Merci. Bonjour. Thank you so much. I love the
French. I've never been to France, but I love everything French. I love the show Emily in Paris. I love the sound of I love the food. I love the accent. I love the people. So it's going to be a pleasure listening to you. So you have quite a story.
I do. I do. Do you want me to go directly and talk about it?
Absolutely, because I mean, and I know that nutrition plays a part of it, but you know, we've had some people on the show, you know, with cancer that are in various stages of their journey. Some might say they're fully recovered, some are in the process. But I think, you know, there's a lot of diseases people can get, but I think that most people maybe would feel that cancer might be the scariest because there's so many unknowns.
Yeah, and absolutely. So, and especially because it was stage 4, and stage 4, there's no other stage after stage 4. Basically, that's the worst. And so, even especially as a physician, it was very scary. When I got the diagnosis, it was very scary. But let me introduce. So, because I'm going to talk about my cancer journey, but I'm a rheumatologist at core. I've done 2 rheumatology training, one in France and one in the US. I had the choice. I could have done some other specialty, but I think rheumatology is the best specialty on earth, and probably in the universe, really. And so I repeated it at Columbia University. And the reason I share this is that I really want to share the fact that my background is very scientific. I've done research. I continue to do research. I've done a lot of evidence-based medicine. I practice evidence-based medicine. And so, and that's really what I want to share. But when it came to my story, I think what's really cool is that I had the evidence-based medicine, and I discovered the power of intuition, which ultimately was proven by evidence-based medicine. So I really wanted to just share this as a background. So my story is this. At 2 weeks after 40, I was doing a 40-year-old midlife crisis. It was pretty painful. So I had finally finished. I had finished for a while my second training in rheumatology. I had moved to Denver. I was in this really awesome institution, and I had kids, which I had so many difficulties getting. And then here I am, sort of like from outside, it looks amazing. And I was so sad and I was so depressed and I would cry. And like I remember the only time that I would not cry would be when I would see patients or when I would like oblige myself to do some research and just like I would put a timer to make sure that I would actually work on the research that I was working on, but otherwise I would just cry. And so 2 weeks after my 40th birthday, which was not a fun birthday because it had snowed and it was like depressing, I'm going into the shower to cry. And I look down, you know how you're looking at the water, and I'm looking down the water and my tears that are all like, mixed. And I see a bump on my right breast. And the first thought, of course, I'm a physician, the first thought was like, this is not supposed to be here. So I get out of my shower and I'm like, I'm showing this to my now ex-husband. And I'm like, look, and he's an incredibly good physician, the best physician I've ever met, really. And I was like, look, and like he's touching and, very, very scientifically. And he's like, yeah. So I called my, like I didn't have a primary care physician, but basically I got to do a biopsy the day that I was leaving to France. So as part of this 40-year-old midlife crisis, I had decided I'm going to go to France, even if it's for an extended weekend. I don't care. I need this. So, and they did the biopsy and they were like, well, are you sure you want to go to France? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, what is it going to change? So I decided to go to France. And I mean, the radiologist had no doubt. It was like, yeah, it's also in the lymph nodes. And I'm like, I'm going to go to France. And who knows, maybe this is one of those, very uncommon diagnoses and so on. So I'm going to France. I get the final diagnosis while surrounded by my family and friends. And I'm like, wow, okay, my midlife crisis went from a midlife crisis to actually at least stage 3 cancer. And then we confirmed that we learned that it was stage 4, that it had gone to the liver and the bone. The reason I share this is that the first thing that one of my friends who's not a physician did was that she was on the phone with me when I had hung up with my ex-husband, and he had told me the diagnosis. And she calls me and she's like, no, but don't worry, like you're Isabel and you're, of course, like you're not doing a normal midlife crisis. You're not just divorcing, you're doing cancer, and you're going to show us how it's done. And I have no worries. And the funny part is that this phrase, like words matter so much to me. Like this phrase really like carried me through the whole journey when I was afraid. There's like, of course you're afraid when you have cancer. Of course you're afraid when you have stage 4. But I carried her words like, oh, you're going to show us how it's done. And then I met a naturopath. And the reason I share this is that I had never met a naturopath in my life, but somehow I was called to meet this person. And she opened her practice on a Saturday because I was there like from Friday to Monday. I was in France like for 4 days and not even 3 days. And I met this naturopath and she tells me, don't see your cancer as an enemy, see it as a friend who's here to teach you something. And once you've learned it, like any good friend is going to go away. Of course, from a medical scientific purposes, you're like, yeah, this is a little bit BS. But in my mind, I was just like, you know what? I was such in a deep, sad place. Now I have this cancer that I have to deal with. And I would much rather think that this is a friend. I have so much to learn. I don't know what I want with my life. I don't know where I want to be. I don't know what I want to do. And I would much rather think that this cancer is a friend rather than an enemy because it's part of me. It has my DNA. And I would rather have this idea that I have some sort of control over it than no control. And so I am so grateful for this naturopath who taught me, taught me this, because I think it taught me a different approach to medicine. And so this is where nutrition plays a role. On my way back to the US, okay, no, before that, one of my friends is like, Isabel, you should change the way you're eating. So I'm going to eat fast type of person. So I would like get food that was in the frozen section, put it in the microwave and voila, like that's all. Or I would eat pasta, would eat a lot of sugar. Some of my some of my meals would be just sugar because I loved it. And I was just like, oh, the only thing I want is to not be too big, but otherwise I don't really care. And then I hear my friends say that. Then on the flight, there is somehow it's really interesting when you're really vulnerable, you meet like incredible people. So on the flight, I kind of become friend with this steward. And I tell him about the fact that I just got diagnosed with breast cancer. And he tells me about his mom that has brain cancer. And he explains, you should change your diet. And I'm like, well, I don't want to restrict myself. And he's like, wait, why are you seeing it as restriction when what you should look at is how many new possibilities you have? So that was like really cool to hear. And I was like, wow, I never thought of this. Like instead of saying, oh, you need to do a diet, it's like, no, change your nutrition, find new things. So I kind of made it like a thing where I was like, I'm going to go to Whole Food and I'm going to find a vegetable that I've never tried or like a legume that I've never tried. So I've discovered sunchoke. I love it. I've discovered turnip. I had never tried. And it's just like those really cool things, kale or like bok choy. I mean, I had never tried those things. And suddenly I'm here and trying those new vegetables. And it's the third person I went to see someone to help me for my, like a coach, someone to help me for my cancer journey because I felt like I needed help. And she's like, well, change your diet. And I was like, okay, third person telling me, fine, I'm going to change my diet. That's it. Three people that have nothing in common are telling me to change my diet. I am hearing you. And the reason it was so hard for me at first and why it needed to be those three people to change my diet was that the science, it's really hard to prove that a certain diet, a certain choice of nutrition does something. Because it's like science is really hard to prove in a human body because you have to show that it's only this one thing that differs into the two groups, and then at the end they have difference. And so someone that's very healthy and like has a very healthy diet, most of the time they also are people who exercise. They also are people who are going to make sure that they are not smoking. And so it's really hard to prove that a certain diet is actually of interest. And so, for example, in cancer, there's a whole movement of saying you should not eat sugar. When I looked at the studies, I couldn't really find super good studies on that. Yet I was like, it actually makes sense. Cancer cells are very simplistic cells, so they don't know how to metabolize other type of nutrition. And so sugar is just like right off to the cancer cell. So I'm going to stop eating, sugar and glucose, basically processed food, easy access sugar. I'm going to stop that. And so I did that. And I'm still, trying to do that at least, 80%. But so that I think is really, really important, is to realize that the reason I wasn't like running into this diet changes was that I was like, well, the studies are not so clear. There are some that are saying yes, some are saying no. So it's not that clear. And then there's this thing that happened. At one point, I was like, hold on. Yes, I'm a physician and I need to share things that are evidence-based medicine to my patients. But when it comes to my own health journey, I'm going to do what feels right for me and what intuitively works and calls me. And so that's why I was like, I'm changing my diet. It's three people. I believe in the universe talking to me right now. I'm changing my diet. I'm doing a whole food plant-based diet. That's it. And so I did this. And the truth is that I changed this diet. It was hard at first because I wasn't used to this. But honestly, I felt the best that I've ever felt in my life. And I really think it was part of the diet because I don't think it was the chemotherapy that made me feel good, you know? So that's the first part. So why I changed my diet. I didn't just change the diet. So I think that that's really important. I did other stuff. I practiced mindfulness. I did a lot of meditation. I did a lot of visualization, affirmations. I did exercise. I journaled. And I tried to surround myself with love. And so, I think that that's really important to say that it wasn't just the diet. And Of course, I did the chemo. Of course, I did the radiation therapy. And of course, I did all of those things. But I think that that's really important to say. It wasn't just the diet. So unless you have question about this journey, I would love to talk about what, like why it's linked to rheumatology for me.
Well, I'd like to know, I mean, I can't imagine, how did you feel when you got the diagnosis? And you had 3-year-old twins. That's got to be, and you already
True.
were feeling so good, to start with. So that must have been
Yeah.
just kind of like the nail on the
It,
coffin.
I think it was almost like this, someone is taking your head and like pushing it down further into the swimming pool. And at the bottom of the swimming pool, there's a bottom to propulse you out. And that is how I felt. Because I remember to my friend, I was like, that was so positive, and she was like, oh, you're going to show us that it's done. I was like, well, I guess my midlife crisis is over now. It was like, well, that was a short one, because it was just like, okay, my midlife crisis is over, now I need to deal with this. And I went into deep reflection of what this meant to me, and did I want to live or did I want to leave? So that was a big I learned how to love myself, which sounds weird. It's not like I didn't love myself, but I don't think I loved myself like really, truly, deeply. Which, when you think about it, is probably one of the reasons I didn't really care about how I was eating, because it didn't matter to me. Like I was just passing through. And I was just like, I think I was very much ego oriented. So I wanted to have my name on a published study. I wanted to, be, recognized by my peers and so on. And I think I went really deep. And, at one point I was like, I have to be okay with the fact that I may die from this. I don't know. I hope not. I'm going to visualize that I'm alive. And at the same time, if I die, I want to make sure that I live the rest of my life intentionally, that I create a relationship with my kids, that I find love, because I felt that there was no more love in my relationship with my ex-husband. And it's funny, like it's almost like there's more love now because we're more friends now than we were then. And so, yeah, I think that it was kind of this realization of like, wow, I haven't lived the life that I needed to live. Like it's almost like, yeah, just this realization that this is not what I want to do with my life, which honestly, the midlife crisis had already started showing, right? It's almost like a veil had been unveiled. And suddenly I'm seeing this life and it looks amazing from outside, right? Like, oh, look at her. She's a physician. She's married to another physician. She has twins. They're so cute. Oh, this is so adorable. And then you actually look deep inside my heart and I'm not feeling loved. And I don't feel that there is any connection with my kids. And I feel like a horrible mom. And I didn't want to be next to my kids. I had no energy for them. And I didn't want to be next to my husband then. And so I just wanted to escape. And here this cancer comes and is kind of giving me this choice of, do you want to stay?
Yeah. What it seems like it seems like so many people that find out they have cancer that I'm hearing from find it at a later stage. Why is that, you think?
So first of all, I had other things on my mind then. And so it's very strange. I went to see someone who did a breast exam in November. So I got diagnosed in like early April, and I had done this like not like not even 6 months prior. I had a breast exam, so I was like, okay, I'm good. And breast exam are just not as good as like mammography. The issue is that I would not touch my breast because I've been always scared of having breast cancer. So I've never, touched myself. Even now I don't, but I do mammography and MRI for this other breast that I have still. And so, yeah, I think that it's not on your mind. Like if it's not on, and the truth is that I mean, I don't think it should be on our mind. Like, you want to live a life, like you want to live your life. I think it's on my mind personally now when I'm like, okay, this is time to do my mammography. This is time to do my MRI. And then I go and see my doctors. But I consider that the job of the doctor is to reassure you so that you have a normal life. And then this cancer is a very aggressive one because it has this receptor at the top. So it's a HER2 positive. It was, sorry, pass. It was a HER2 positive breast cancer. And so there is this receptor that makes it very aggressive because it's kind of like telling the cancer cells to multiply. So that like that it went very fast once it was there. But at the same time, and so this is where it's really cool, is that the same thing that makes it very aggressive also makes it that it responds very well to treatment. And so we have immunotherapy that targets directly this receptor and basically does pew, no more cancer cell, and then they go away. And so I was like, okay, it's HER2 positive. I'm gonna go into this idea that maybe this is a good thing, and we can take care of this, and we can, treat this with treatment, which it did. And the rest of all of this other work, the nutrition and the visualization and meditation and all of this, what it did is that it allowed me to live a life where I kind of rebuilt myself and I kind of felt like good, even though I was going through cancer, And so that's like the empowerment of the patient. And I think that that's so valuable and so important. And I want all my patients to get that.
Did you have a strong family history of cancer?
Well, so that's actually really funny. Yeah, and I think almost. So when I was a kid, I think that that's actually one of the reasons I became a doctor, because I wanted to defeat death. I don't think I've shared this with a lot of people, but anyway, so the job, like why I went to medicine, I was like, I'm going to defeat death, right? And then my first training in a hospital was in a cancer, and I was just seeing all of those people dying, and I was like, whoa, I'm not defeating death at all here. Like, we are not defeating death. Like, this is not on us. And so then I discovered rheumatology, and I was like, well, I'm not going to defeat death, but I'm going to defeat pain, and I'm going to defeat inflammation. What's really, really cool for the years, and I have more than 20 years of, training, is that you come from this place as, I started when I was, 17, 18 years old, medicine. And then you come from this place and you're like, hold on, I don't do anything. It's all my patients who are doing things. I'm the witness of the healing of my patients. And so I think that that's so important that we realize that the doctor is just a coach on the sideline that's helping the team to make it. And the team is like, the mind, the body, and the spirit. And we're just helping our patients make it and, succeed. But we are just a coach. I think that I see my role as a physician as a coach. But yeah, so the reason I wanted to defeat death was that when I was hearing my parents, it sounded that almost everyone in their family had died either of very old age, especially in the Corsican descent that I'm from. So my mom is Corsican. Actually, there's Napoleon right now in the theater. So Napoleon is from Corsica, and Corsica is French, and it became French. It was sold to France by Italy only 1 year before Napoleon was born, which would have made Napoleon Italian otherwise, which I think is super cool. So anyway, I come from there. My mom is from there. And so either they lived very, very long, like 100 years old, 98 years old, or they had died early on because of cancer. So there was a history of cancer. And later on, we learned that I'm BRCA positive. So I'm closer to Angelina Jolie, thanks to that. So, I'm BRCA positive. And then we found out that my mom is BRCA positive. And thanks to that, I think that that's really wonderful. She removed ovaries because there's more ovary risk for cancer, and that's harder to detect and harder to treat. So she removed our ovaries. They offered us to remove the breast, but the truth is that you can do a mammogram, you can do an MRI, and those are very good, and you can pick up now things much earlier. So yeah. Good question. Yeah.
Yeah, what treatment did you have, and was it successful?
Super successful, incredibly successful. So I did chemo, I did the immunotherapy, which is called this HER2 receptor agonist. Basically, it stopped the HER2. So it goes on the HER2, the receptor I was telling you, it goes there and it says, stop. And it stops. Like, it's almost like, just imagine the cell and it like flops it. So I got that. And then later on, I got radiation therapy. That was painful. And then
Radiation tell me about that. It was painful.
yeah, it burned.
Ooh, that
I
sounds
mean, it
terrible.
went, yeah, well, I think, I went through chemotherapy and that was not super, it wasn't enjoyable, but there was something very incredible about it because I was still rock climbing and I was just like, oh, look at me, I'm rock climbing. And I just went, so I would go to my chemo and then I would rock climb after. And then I had this whole thing that I was doing for myself. So I would not eat the day before. I just do bone broth the day before and the day of the chemo with this idea, again, not the science is not clear about this. However, it made sense to me. So I was like, I'm doing this. So basically, right, like fasting with this idea that when the chemo comes, it's going to, like, that's the first sort of sugar that my cancer cell are going to see. And so they're going to gulp it, they're going to eat it all, right? And so I was like, I'm not eating the day before and the day of the chemo. But then what I would do the day after, because I knew I still had my taste bud were still there, I would offer myself the best restaurant in town. And I would, at that moment, I would be like, I'm going to eat whatever I want. And of course, I was pretty good with my diet, but it was like, I'm going to reward myself for having done 2 days of any food, really, like, except for bone broth. The cool thing is that I do think that it helped with tolerating the chemo better. And again, like, within 3 weeks, there was no more tumor, it had gone. That said, again, like the chemo by itself can do that. So is it the chemo or is it the chemo plus the diet or plus, the not eating the fasting before? We don't know. But why it doesn't matter that we don't know, because at the end of the day, it made sense for me, so I did it. And then, I can just say, okay, this is what I did personally, but like everyone is very different. It just made sense to me.
Wow.
And then
So
surgery, yeah.
oh, yes. So you had everything pretty
I
much.
did everything. Honestly, like the surgery, someone offered, like my oncologist offered me not to do surgery because we couldn't see any more cancer left, which is crazy. So you go from an orange-sized tumor to nothing. But I did surgery because there was some calcification still in that breast. And I remember she was like, would you be really upset if we do the surgery, we remove your breast, and then ultimately there's no cancer? And I'm looking at her, I'm like, hell no, I'd be loving the fact that there's no cancer in there. Like, that would be that, like, it's really worked. And there was maybe a little bit cancer left. I still don't know. I'm gonna think that it was maybe just, some sort of scarring, but there was still a little bit of cancer left, but it was all gone, all gone.
What do you have to do now, and how are you like living your life now differently? And what advice do you have for somebody that has a cancer diagnosis?
Okay, so I still get actually like the immunotherapy because it has a high recurrence rate. So some people call it non-evidence disease instead of remission. I call it remission because there is no evidence of disease on treatment. So I just don't like the word no evidence of disease because it's almost like it's like they're hiding, and then it's like, okay, I'm gonna pop. And so I think that word matters. I call it remission. I'm in remission. I cannot say that I'm cured because I have still some treatment. Who cares? I don't care. Like, I'm just like, I'm totally fine. I'm living my life. And I take the medication every 3 weeks. And I'm super grateful to have access to this medication every 3 weeks. And in addition, I take aromatase inhibitor, I think letrozole, and I was on tamoxifen when I still had my ovaries. So there, yeah, we removed the ovaries as well. It took me a while to accept to remove the ovaries, but I did. end up removing the ovaries because I was
Does
just
that
like,
mean that you went into menopause early?
yeah, I did go to
So
menopause.
talk about that because you're a very young woman, and I mean,
Yeah.
no people I talk to don't like it at any age, but you've had to go through it very
Yeah,
early.
that was interesting. Yeah, so basically, not only you go into menopause, but then you cannot do hormone replacement therapy. However, you can get the thing that Dr. Rachel Rubin loves, right? You can still put some hormone estrogen inside the how do you say vagina? So you can put that inside the vagina and that actually like really helps having a totally normal sexual life. Yeah, this is great. Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know, like so in terms of the hot flashes, actually, what has really helped me was is the grapeseed oil. You can take that; it's over the counter. I buy it on Amazon, and it works amazingly. And I looked at the studies. Actually, there are some really good studies. So my oncologist recommended it to me, and I took it, and I have close to no hot flashes as long as I take it. And because you always try to not take it, I try to not take it, and it comes back. The hot flashes come back. So now I just take it. It's
Well,
so easy.
at least when you're old enough to go through menopause, you won't have to do it then.
You think so? You think it's going to stop at one
Well,
point?
I mean, I don't know, but I'm trying to look at the bright side. You have a lot of doctors on this show, and one of the things I keep hearing, of course, cancer is multifactorial and everybody's case is different, but I keep hearing that exercise plays a key role in both, recovery and just
Yeah.
prevention. And I'm curious, do you exercise? Are you
Oh my
exercising
gosh, yes.
now?
Oh, yes, and yes, and yes. Sorry, I was like all prepared to talk about nutrition, but I love
No,
talking about this.
we
No
can talk,
problem.
we can go there. We can go there next. It's just that I'm
No,
interested
no,
in
I
your
love it.
story because you're the real person behind the story, and
Yeah.
I want to inspire people that if they get a very dire diagnosis,
No,
it doesn't
totally.
mean it's a death sentence.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. So totally. And you were asking me what I say to patients that have a cancer. I like to come back to that question that you had earlier. I think that we have to realize that we're almost 2024. I'm so grateful to be a physician in this era. I am also so grateful to be a patient in this era. I'm also so incredibly grateful to be a mom in this era. We are seeing such an incredibly advances in medicine. And so I think I held on to this when I had my cancer diagnosis. I was like, it was 2019. We are in 2019. The treatments we have now are so different than what they used to be 10 years ago. So you cannot just look at what my grandfather went through or what, like your mom or your aunt or your uncle or some friends that went through. One, because every single cancer is different. But the second thing is that we just the science is just incredible. And those immunotherapy, melanoma used to be a death sentence when I started medical school. Now we have immunotherapy that actually can cure it. Stage 4 melanoma can be cured. Stage 4 lung cancer can be cured. It's not all of them, but it's a lot of them. And I've seen a ton of what in the past would have been called miracle, and that now we can just say are advances in science. And so I think that that's super important to realize that there's always hope. And when it comes to rheumatologic disorder, which some people are like really scared about it and all this, and I'm like, no, we have treatment that can get you to remission. So there's no reason to be afraid or to be to be like hopeless, because there's so much hope. So I want to say that. Now, talking about exercise. Yes, 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 yes. So I was telling you that I continue rock climbing. So I love rock climbing. I'm not very good at it, but I love it. And I would do my chemo. I mean, I would, like one of the most incredible moments for me during my cancer journey. There were so many, but that one was I went to get my chemo, and we had an au pair at the time, and so I knew she would take care of the kids. And I had the choice: do I go back to my house and take care, and watch the kids, or do I go and rock climb? And I remember I was like, I don't have enough energy to watch the kids right now. They're going to crawl on me. They're going to jump on me. I don't want to do that. I'm going to go rock climbing. And so I went rock climbing, and I remember I put the rope up, and as I'm putting the rope up and I start just like climbing, and I'm like, wow, I am not dead today. And that was huge. And so I think that like exercising has like so many benefits. One of them, I think, for me was psychological, where I was like, I'm defying death right now. And so I'm not dead today. I'm alive. And rock climbing is not given to everyone. And so the fact that I was rock climbing at that moment, I was like, I'm not dead. And so I had a couple of people who are like, why are you still working? You have stage 4 cancer. You should be like enjoying your life. And I look at them and I'm like, as far as I know, I have more energy than you do. So I'm going to continue to do what I love, and I love being a doctor, so I'm going to continue to do that. And so I would be like, okay, that, you know, and then I started looking at the science behind exercise. So there's a lot of science behind exercise, and we know that people who exercise actually improve like outcomes in almost all the conditions that you look at: cardiovascular, cancer, as well as a rheumatologic disorder. So if you exercise, you actually improve your outcomes. So that's actually so good, right? And so there's a study I read, I thought it was so cool, because how come exercise, when you're exercising for fun, that helps your outcome, that helps your health. But if you're doing physical activities as part of your work, then that doesn't help you. It's so weird, like why? And so I think that there is like this, you know, this mindset probably. And there was a study where they told some cleaners in a hotel that they were exercising and that was really good for their health. And they didn't say anything to the other ones. And that basically the people, the ladies that, I think they were mostly ladies, that thought that they were exercising actually started losing weight, which is like, that's the only thing they did. Just telling them that, oh, you know that as part of your work, it looks like you're exercising so much. Anyway, and so the study I was referring, I wanted to talk about, was so cool. So it's a study on mice or rats, one of the two. And it doesn't matter because, you know, it does matter, but like meaning that, remember, like studies that are done on rat doesn't necessarily translate in human, because we are much more complicated than mice and rats. But it's really cool. They did a study where they basically created a melanoma, I think. And what they did is that they they stimulated those mice to exercise, versus some other mice. They were like, no, you're not going to exercise. So they would stop them from exercising. And then they gave them chemo. And the mice that were exercising responded more to chemo than the other ones. And you're like, this is so cool, right? This is so, so cool. So basically, what they think is that the immune system is so incredibly complex and so cool at the same time. But basically, there's this idea that exercise stimulates your immune system. By stimulating your immune system, it's allowing your immune system to heal your body. And so it's recognizing the cancer cells as, this is not normal. And in rheumatologic disorder, it's kind of the same, right? It's an inflammatory response that's not normal. And so the idea is like, okay, well, how do we get the immune system to go back into balance? And so the exercise, some of the hypothesis is that the exercise is actually helping the immune system to get back into balance. And so that's really, really cool. So yeah, absolutely recommended. And I think an exercise that makes you have fun, that's like the best.